Close your eyes and let your body settle. Let the weight of the day soften into the surface beneath you. Tonight, we're going to travel together to a time so distant it almost feels imagined. A time before cities, before forests as we know them, before even the shape of the continents had settled into the map you've grown up with. Tonight, we're going to walk through 200 million years of dinosaur rule. 200 million years. That's a number so vast it dissolves the moment you try to hold it. But don't try to hold it. Just let it drift. Imagine yourself as a quiet witness, hovering above ancient landscapes, watching the slow turning of an age. The dinosaurs are sleeping. The dinosaurs are walking. The dinosaurs are rising. And you are simply here, breathing softly, listening as their long, gentle story unfolds beneath the stars of a world that no longer exists. If you enjoy listening to sleepy prehistoric dinosaur stories like this, subscribe. I post stories like this weekly. Now let your mind drift backward, not by years, not by centuries, but by epochs. Backward through the rise and fall of empires. Backward past the first humans walking out of Africa. Backward past the last ice age. Past the first mammals stepping into a world without giants. Keep going. Keep drifting. The air around you grows warmer. The sky changes colour, softening into a paler blue. The smell of the world shifts, becomes greener, wetter, older. You're entering the late Triassic, around 230 million years ago. The world here is still recovering from something extraordinary. The rain that fell for 2 million years has finally stopped. The clouds have parted. The land is breathing again. And somewhere in the quiet valleys of this new world, the first true dinosaurs are taking their first steps. They are small. They are unremarkable. They are, by every measure of their time, nobody important. And yet, everything that follows will trace its way back to them. Picture the world they were born into. There are no familiar continents yet. Instead, there is one great landmass called Pangaea, although it has begun to crack and shift. Long fissures run across its surface, slowly widening, slowly pulling apart. The Atlantic Ocean does not exist yet, but its first whisper is being written into the rocks. Where one day Africa will sit beside South America, there is only continuous land, dry in some places, lush in others, transitioning slowly from the wet world that came before into something more varied, more seasonal, more alive. The forests are different from anything you would recognize. There are no flowers, there is no grass. The dominant plants are conifers and cycads and tree ferns, growing in dense clusters near the rivers, their trunks tall and pale, their needles whispering in the warm breeze. The air is rich with oxygen, a little richer than today, and it carries the scent of resin, of wet stone, of slow decay and slow growth. It is a world that smells like a greenhouse left open to the rain. Now slow your breathing. Imagine you are walking softly through one of these forests. The ground beneath your bare feet is soft, layered with old needles and fallen branches that have not quite finished decomposing. Sunlight filters through the canopy in pale gold streams. Somewhere ahead of you, a small movement catches your eye. A creature about the size of a medium dog, walking on two long, slender legs. Its skin is dry and pebbled, not scaly like a modern lizard, but textured, almost soft. Its tail extends behind it for balance. Its forelimbs are short and grasping. Its eyes are bright and curious. This is one of the first dinosaurs. Its name, given much later by humans who would never see it alive, is Eoraptor, the dawn thief. It does not know it is the beginning of something. It does not know that its descendants will one day shake the earth with their footsteps, that they will swim in seas, glide through skies, dominate every continent. It only knows hunger, curiosity, and the warm rhythm of a quiet afternoon. And as it disappears into the undergrowth, the long story of dinosaur rule has truly begun. Let yourself sink a little deeper. You're watching from outside time, gentle and unhurried. The world spins slowly. Days become years. Years become millennia. The first dinosaurs spread outward, not in great waves of conquest, but in slow generational drifts. A few populations move into new valleys. A few individuals find new food sources. A few lineages experiment with new body shapes. There is no plan, no urgency, only the patient unfolding of life filling the spaces left empty by older creatures who could not adapt to the changed world. The reptiles called Rauisuchians, who had ruled the late Triassic, were beginning to fade. Not all at once, not dramatically, but quietly, as their bodies and habits proved less suited to the shifting climate. The synapsids, those mammal-like creatures that had once dominated the Permian, were now small and hidden, retreating into burrows and the spaces between fallen logs. They would wait. They would wait for a very long time. But for now, the stage was opening, and the dinosaurs were stepping onto it. In what is now Argentina, the rocks remember those early dinosaurs vividly. Paleontologists today walk along sun-warmed cliffs and find their bones embedded in the stone, perfectly preserved by quiet sediments laid down over countless seasons. Eoraptor, Herrerasaurus, and the others. They were small and varied, some no larger than a chicken, others growing to the size of a wolf. Some were predators, hunting smaller animals and insects. Some were omnivores, eating whatever the season offered. Their teeth were sharp but generalized. Their bodies were lightly built. They were, in the truest sense, beginners. Around them, the world was still dominated by other creatures. Large amphibians lurked in the wet places. Crocodile-like reptiles patrolled the rivers. Strange beaked herbivores called rhynchosaurs grazed in herds across the open plains. The dinosaurs were not yet rulers. They were neighbours. Quiet, watchful, patient neighbours, finding their place in a world that had not yet noticed them. But the world was changing again. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the climate was drying out. The wet forests of the early-late Triassic were giving way to more seasonal landscapes. Some regions became drier, dustier, more open. Others remained lush. The breaking apart of Pangaea was beginning to alter wind patterns, rainfall patterns, the very chemistry of the air, and as the landscape shifted, the creatures within it shifted too. Some thrived, some struggled. Some, despite millions of years of dominance, simply could not adapt fast enough. By the close of the Triassic period, around 201 million years ago, another great extinction event swept across the planet. It was not as dramatic as the Great Dying that had come before, but it was significant. Volcanic activity along the rifting edges of Pangaea released vast quantities of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Temperatures rose, ocean chemistry shifted. Many of the old reptile groups, the Rauisuchians and their relatives, the large amphibians, the rhynchosaurs, all faded into memory. But the dinosaurs survived, more than survived. They emerged from the end-Triassic extinction with the field cleared in front of them. The competitors who had kept them in check for tens of millions of years were gone. The ecological niches that had been filled by other reptile groups now stood empty, waiting. And the dinosaurs, with their efficient upright posture, their adaptable bodies, their varied diets, were perfectly positioned to fill them. The Jurassic period was about to begin, and with it, the true age of dinosaur dominance. Let yourself rest in this transition. The old world has quieted. The new world is opening. There is no rush, no struggle, no fanfare. Just the slow, patient arrival of a long, long age. 200 million years. We are only at the beginning. Breathe softly, drift gently. We have so much further to go. The Jurassic dawned warm and humid. The fragments of Pangaea had drifted just slightly apart, opening narrow seaways where there had once been continuous land. Shallow tropical waters now lapped against new coastlines. The interior of the broken supercontinent, no longer trapped behind thousands of miles of dry land, began to receive moisture again. Forests expanded, rivers ran longer and deeper, lakes appeared where deserts had been. The whole planet seemed to inhale, to fill with green, and in this softer, wetter world the dinosaurs began to grow. You're walking now through a Jurassic forest, perhaps 180 million years ago. The trees are taller than anything you would see in a modern forest, some of them reaching 100 feet or more. They are conifers, ancient cousins of the pines and redwoods that still grow today, but stranger somehow with looser branches and broader, cones. Beneath them, the forest floor is carpeted with ferns of every size, from delicate green fronds to massive tree ferns that arch above your head. The air is thick and humid. Insects hum in the warm light. A small lizard, no longer than your hand, darts across a fallen log and disappears. Somewhere in the distance you hear a low resonant sound. It is not a roar. It is something deeper, gentler, like the slow pulse of a great drum. You step carefully forward, and the trees thin, and you see them. Sauropods. A small herd of them, moving slowly through a clearing, their long necks lifted high, their heads disappearing into the canopy, where they pluck mouthfuls of soft needles from the upper branches. These animals are larger than anything that walks the modern earth. The smallest among them is the size of an elephant. The largest, an old female at the head of the herd, is the length of 2 school buses placed end to end. Her body is barrel-shaped, supported by 4 pillar-like legs. Her tail extends behind her like a long tapering whip, balancing the weight of her impossibly long neck. Her skin is wrinkled and softly coloured, grey with hints of dusty rose and pale green. She moves slowly, deliberately, each footstep pressing into the soft ground with a quiet thud you feel as much as hear. The sound you heard from the distance was her breathing, the slow, vast rhythm of lungs the size of a small car. The herd is calm, unhurried. They have nowhere to be and nothing to fear. They are sauropods, and they are the largest animals that will ever walk on land. How did they grow so large? It is one of the gentle mysteries of the dinosaur age. Their bodies were built for size in ways no other land animal has ever quite matched. Their bones were lighter than they appeared, hollowed in places by air sacs that ran through their skeletons, lightening the load while still providing strength. Their hearts were enormous, powerful pumps capable of pushing blood up the long climb to their distant heads. Their lungs worked differently from yours, drawing air through a one-way system that was far more efficient than the in-and-out breathing of mammals. Even their eggs were small relative to their bodies, soft and round, laid in nests scraped into the warm soil. From an egg the size of a soccer ball, a sauropod could grow to weigh 60 tons in just a few decades. It is a feat of biology so extreme that scientists are still working out exactly how it was possible. But it happened, and on this Jurassic afternoon you are watching it happen. The herd moves on, browsing slowly, their long necks rising and falling in unhurried sweeps. You follow, quiet and unseen. The sauropods are not alone in this forest. Smaller herbivores move along their flanks, nibbling at the lower branches the giants cannot reach. Stegosaurus, with their double row of plates rising from their backs, walk in slow pairs, their tails dragging gently behind them, their small heads bent low to the ferns. Their plates are softly tinted, perhaps for display, perhaps for temperature regulation. No one knows for certain. The stegosaurs have spiked tails called thagomisers, which they will swing in defence if threatened. But right now they are calm, content to share the forest with the larger creatures. Beyond them, you see ornithopods, smaller bipedal herbivores with hoof-like toes and gentle faces, moving in small groups, alert but unafraid. The Jurassic forest is full of life, full of grazers and browsers, full of soft sounds and slow movements. But there are predators here too. They are quieter, harder to see. As you stand watching the sauropod herd, you become aware of a presence at the edge of the clearing. A pair of Allosaurus has emerged from the trees. They are large theropods, perhaps 30 feet long from snout to tail tip, walking on 2 powerful hind legs. Their forelimbs are smaller but still strong, ending in 3 curved claws. Their skulls are long and narrow with crests above their eyes and rows of serrated teeth. They are watching the herd, but they do not attack. The sauropods are too large, too well defended. A single swing of that long tail could break a predator's ribs. A single misplaced step could crush bone. The Allosaurus are patient. They will hunt smaller prey today, perhaps a young ornithopod, perhaps a sick stegosaur. They will wait for opportunity. They will not waste their energy on a fight they cannot easily win. This is the rhythm of the Jurassic forest. Predator and prey, giant and small, all woven together in the slow tapestry of a warm and abundant world. There is violence here, of course. There is death. But it is gentle in its scale, distributed across the long years and across vast landscapes. No catastrophe looms, no extinction approaches. The dinosaurs are settling into their long reign, finding their forms, refining their strategies. They will continue this way for tens of millions of years. The world will warm and cool, the continents will continue their slow drift, the forest will rise and fall and rise again. And through it all, the dinosaurs will remain, generation after generation, lineage after lineage. The age that began as a quiet dawn is now in its full, long morning. Let your awareness drift downward now, away from the giants, toward the smaller creatures of the Jurassic. There is so much more here than just the great sauropods and the famous predators. Beneath the canopy, in the leaf litter, beneath fallen logs, a whole hidden world is alive. Tiny mammals, no larger than mice, scurry through the undergrowth. They are the descendants of the synapsids, those creatures who once ruled before the dinosaurs and were pushed into the margins. They have not given up. They are simply waiting, evolving in quiet, learning the arts of nocturnal life, of small spaces, of patience. They eat insects. They eat seeds. They eat the eggs of smaller dinosaurs when they can find them. They live short, intense lives, raising their young in burrows and hollow logs. They are not important. Not yet. But they are here, and they will continue to be here for the entire 200 million years of dinosaur rule. They will outlast the giants. They will be ready when their time comes, but that time is very, very far away. There are insects here too, more diverse than you might expect. Beetles in iridescent shells, dragonflies the size of your hand, primitive wasps and bees, moths and lacewings. Many are the ancestors of insects you would recognize today. Some are stranger, with body plans that have not survived to the modern world. They fill the air with soft sounds, the click and hum of countless small lives. There are also early birds, although they would not look quite like birds to you. They are small theropod dinosaurs that have begun to develop feathers, first for warmth, then for display, then eventually for flight. Archaeopteryx, perhaps the most famous of them, lives in the late Jurassic, gliding from tree to tree on feathered wings. Half bird, half dinosaur, a creature caught in the slow act of becoming something new. You watch one perch on a low branch, its feathered tail trailing behind it, its small clawed hands gripping the bark. It tilts its head, looks at you, then launches into the air with a soft beat of wings and disappears into the canopy. The Jurassic continues for tens of millions of years. The world warms, the seas rise, shallow oceans cover much of what is now the central United States. Other shallow seas spread across Europe, across parts of Africa, across Asia. The sauropods grow even larger. The theropods diversify into countless forms. Stegosaurs reach their peak and then begin to decline, their armoured bodies still common but slowly being replaced by other herbivores. New types of dinosaurs appear. Ankylosaurs, with their tank-like bodies and clubbed tails, begin to spread. Ornithopods grow more sophisticated, developing the chewing teeth that will allow them to process tougher plants. The world is full. The world is thriving. The world belongs to the dinosaurs, and they are using it well. Let yourself drift through the long Jurassic. Let the millennia slip past like soft clouds. There is no urgency in this story, no deadline. The dinosaurs have time. They have so much time. By the end of the Jurassic, around 145 million years ago, they have already ruled for more than 80 million years. That is longer than the entire history of mammals as a dominant group. That is longer than humans can really comprehend, and yet more than half of their reign is still ahead. We are walking now into the Cretaceous, the longest and most diverse period of the dinosaur age, the time when their forms will reach their fullest expression, when the world itself will begin to look almost familiar, when flowers will bloom for the first time and the air will fill with their perfume. Breathe softly, drift gently. The story is only deepening. The Cretaceous opens with a kind of bloom. Not a sudden one, not a dramatic flowering, but a slow, patient unfolding that takes millions of years. The continents have continued to drift apart. The Atlantic Ocean has begun to widen. South America and Africa, once joined, are now separated by a young, narrow sea that will continue to grow. Australia and Antarctica are pulling away from each other. India is beginning its long journey northward, eventually to collide with Asia and raise the Himalayas, although that is many tens of millions of years in the future. The world is becoming more fragmented, more varied, more full of distinct regions. And in each region, the dinosaurs are evolving in their own way, adapting to local climates, local plants, local conditions. The age of global uniformity is ending. The age of local diversity is beginning. In the early Cretaceous, something quite remarkable happens. The first flowering plants appear. They are small at first, modest little things, easy to overlook among the towering conifers and the dense ferns. But they are different. They have a new strategy. Instead of relying on wind to spread their pollen, as conifers do, they enlist the help of insects. They produce nectar, sweet and energy-rich, to attract pollinators. They produce flowers, colourful displays designed to be seen, to be remembered, to be visited again. And the insects respond. Bees, those crucial partners of flowering plants, are evolving alongside them, their bodies adapting to gather pollen, their behaviours becoming more sophisticated. Together, plants and insects begin a partnership that will reshape every land ecosystem on Earth. By the late Cretaceous, flowering plants will have spread across the world, diversifying into countless forms, becoming the dominant plant group in many ecosystems. Imagine yourself walking through a Cretaceous landscape now, perhaps 100 million years ago. The forest still has its conifers, its ferns, its cycads. But now, in the open spaces and along the riverbanks, you see something new. Magnolias with their large white blossoms, early flowering shrubs with delicate pink and yellow blooms, vines that wind their way up tree trunks, dotted with small bright flowers. The air carries new scents now, not just the resinous smell of conifers, but the sweet complex perfumes of flowers. Bees hum among the blossoms, butterflies, ancestors of the ones you know today, drift on warm currents. The world is becoming more colourful. The world is becoming more fragrant. The world is, in some quiet way, becoming more like the world you know. The dinosaurs have changed too. The classic Jurassic giants, the great sauropods like Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus, are still present in some regions, but they are no longer as dominant. Newer groups have risen to share the herbivore niches. The hadrosaurs, the duck-billed dinosaurs, have appeared and begun to spread. They are medium-sized to large herbivores with broad flat beaks and hundreds of tightly packed teeth, perfect for grinding tough plant material. They live in herds, sometimes very large herds, moving across the landscape in search of food. Their bodies are well suited to both walking on four legs and running on two when they need to flee. Their hollow head crests, in some species, may have allowed them to make resonant calls, low booming sounds that travelled across long distances. Imagine standing on a hillside at sunset, watching a herd of Parasaurolophus moving through a valley below, their long curved crests catching the orange light, their voices rising and falling in slow, mournful harmonies. It is a sound that no human will ever hear in the world that exists, but it once filled valleys across the late Cretaceous. The ceratopsians have also risen. These are the horned dinosaurs, the famous family that includes Triceratops and many less well-known cousins. They are quadrupedal herbivores with great bony frills extending from the backs of their skulls and various arrangements of horns on their faces. Some have a single horn on the snout like Centrosaurus. Some have 3 horns, 2 large ones above the eyes and a smaller one on the nose like Triceratops. Others have elaborate frills decorated with spikes and bumps and curling protrusions. The frills and horns serve multiple purposes. They are weapons against predators, certainly, but they are also displays for attracting mates and for communicating within the herd. A young ceratopsian would have grown up, watching the older animals lower their heads and clash horns in ritual contests, learning the social language of the species. By the late Cretaceous, ceratopsians are some of the most numerous large herbivores in North America and Asia. Whole landscapes are shaped by their grazing, by the wallows where they bathe in mud, by the trails their herds carve across plains. The ankylosaurs have continued to thrive. By the late Cretaceous, they have evolved into truly impressive armoured tanks. Their bodies are covered in bony plates and spikes. Their tails end in heavy clubs of fused bone that can be swung with tremendous force. They walk low to the ground, their bellies sometimes only a foot or 2 above the dirt, their heads small and triangular. Even their eyelids are armoured. They are slow, but they are nearly invulnerable. A predator that attacks an ankylosaur risks broken legs, crushed ribs, even death from a single well-placed swing of that bony club. Most predators learn to leave them alone. The ankylosaurs go about their lives in peaceful indifference, browsing on low vegetation, drinking from quiet streams, sleeping in shallow depressions they scrape into the ground. They are perhaps the most peaceful of the great dinosaurs, asking nothing of the world but to be left alone, prepared at any moment to make any aggressor regret their decision. And then there are the predators. The Cretaceous is the age of the great theropods, the most famous and iconic of all dinosaurs. The Allosaurus of the Jurassic has been replaced by newer, larger, more sophisticated hunters. In the southern continents, in what is now South America and Africa, the Carcharodontosaurs have risen. These are massive predators, some rivaling Tyrannosaurus rex in size, with skulls more than 5 feet long and teeth like serrated knives. Giganotosaurus, one of the largest of them, may have hunted the great titanosaurs, the southern sauropods that have continued to grow even as their northern cousins declined. Imagine the silent stalking of such a predator, its huge body moving carefully through the underbrush, its eyes fixed on a young titanosaur drinking at a river. The hunt is not easy. The prey is enormous, but the predator is patient. The predator has time. The predator is, in this moment, the greatest hunter the world has ever seen. In the northern continents, particularly in what is now North America and Asia, a different lineage of predators has risen to dominance. These are the tyrannosaurs. They began as small, slender theropods in the early Cretaceous, no larger than a wolf, but over tens of millions of years they grew. By the late Cretaceous, they had become some of the most powerful land predators in Earth's history. Tyrannosaurus rex, the most famous of them, is 40 feet long, weighs 8 or 9 tons, and has the most powerful bite force of any land animal that has ever lived. Its teeth are longer than your hand, banana-shaped and serrated, capable of crushing bone. Its skull is reinforced for the stress of biting through bone and flesh. Its small forelimbs, often mocked in popular culture, are actually quite strong, although their precise function is still debated. They were probably used for gripping prey at close range. T-Rex itself is a specialist, a finisher, a creature that has evolved to bring down large herbivores with overwhelming force. But T-Rex is not alone in the late Cretaceous predator guild. Smaller theropods occupy other niches. Dromaeosaurs, the family that includes Velociraptor and Deinonychus, are pack hunters, smaller and faster than tyrannosaurs, equipped with sickle-shaped claws on their second toes that they use to slash and grip prey. They are intelligent, social, and efficient. Some species hunt cooperatively, taking down prey larger than themselves through coordinated attacks. Other small theropods specialize in hunting fish or small mammals or insects or eggs. The forests and plains of the Cretaceous are full of theropods of every size and strategy, a rich predatory ecosystem that mirrors the rich herbivore communities they hunt. Drift now, gently, away from the predators. Let your mind float upward, into the warm air of the late Cretaceous. Look up. The skies are not empty. They are filled with creatures that have been ruling the air for nearly as long as the dinosaurs have been ruling the ground. Pterosaurs, the flying reptiles, cousins to the dinosaurs but not dinosaurs themselves, members of a separate lineage that took to the air more than 200 million years ago. By the late Cretaceous, they have evolved into some of the largest flying animals that will ever exist. Quetzalcoatlus, named after the Aztec feathered serpent god, has a wingspan of over 35 feet, larger than a small airplane. When standing on the ground, it is as tall as a giraffe. It walks on all fours, folding its enormous wings against its body, and it stalks across open landscapes hunting smaller dinosaurs and other prey, much like a giant stork. When it spreads its wings and lifts into the air, it does so slowly, powerfully, with great sweeping beats that carry it high above the earth. Smaller pterosaurs fill other niches. There are fish-eating pterosaurs that fly low over coastal waters, snatching prey from the surface. There are pterosaurs with elaborate head crests, perhaps for display, perhaps for stability in flight. There are pterosaurs no larger than crows, and pterosaurs the size of small giraffes. They are diverse, successful, abundant. The skies of the Cretaceous are alive with their soaring forms, their slow circling, their drifting between thermals. Watching them, you might mistake them for birds, but they are not birds. Birds are evolving alongside them, descended from small theropod dinosaurs, but the pterosaurs are something else, an older, parallel experiment in flight. Now drop your gaze again. Look toward the seas. They are warm and shallow in the late Cretaceous, much shallower than today's oceans, with vast continental shelves submerged under tropical waters. The seas are not empty either. They are full of marine reptiles, themselves not dinosaurs but contemporaries of the dinosaurs, sharing the world with them. The mosasaurs are the apex predators of the Cretaceous oceans. Long, sinuous bodies, sometimes 50 feet or more, propelled by powerful tails. They have jaws lined with sharp teeth, and a second row of teeth on the roof of their mouths to grip slippery prey. They hunt fish, ammonites, smaller marine reptiles even, occasionally each other. They are descended from a small lizard ancestor that returned to the sea relatively recently in evolutionary terms, but they have adapted with astonishing speed. Plesiosaurs also still swim in these waters. Their long-necked, four-flippered bodies have been a successful design since the Triassic. Some plesiosaurs have become specialists in catching fish in the deep open ocean. Others, the pliosaurs, have shorter necks and larger heads, and are formidable predators in their own right, rivaling the mosasaurs in power. Sea turtles, the ancestors of modern sea turtles, paddle through the warm shallows, laying their eggs on quiet beaches. Sharks, in many forms, continue their long lineage, some growing to enormous size. The Cretaceous seas are as rich and varied as the lands above them. Every level of the water column is occupied. Every prey type is hunted. The ocean is a vast and busy ecosystem, and it has been continuously productive for tens of millions of years. The world of the Cretaceous, then, is a world at its full bloom. Every niche is filled, every continent has its own communities, every ocean has its own predators and prey. The dinosaurs and their relatives have ruled for over 100 million years by now, and they show no signs of stopping. The tropics are warm and lush. The poles are temperate with no permanent ice. Forests grow in what is now Antarctica, populated by polar dinosaurs that have adapted to long winter nights and brief, bright summers. Deserts exist in some regions, but even they support specialized communities. Dinosaurs that have learned to live with little water, that nest in the cool of night, that travel in small bands across the dunes. There is no place on Earth, save perhaps the highest peaks of mountain ranges where dinosaurs do not live. Let your awareness rest here for a moment. Float above this world. Imagine the great herds moving across the plains, the slow processions of sauropods through the ferny valleys, the quiet stalking of theropods at the forest edge, the hadrosaurs calling to each other through the mist of dawn, the pterosaurs riding the high thermals, the mosasaurs cruising through the warm seas. Everything is in motion, and yet everything is calm. There is no looming catastrophe, there is no warning. The dinosaurs do not know that their reign has a horizon, that an ending is approaching from the deep dark of space. They simply live, as they have lived for tens of millions of years, as they will continue to live for tens of millions more. The story is long, the story is patient, the story has not yet reached its end. Let your mind drift again, deeper into the Cretaceous. Let yourself become smaller, closer to the ground, walking softly through a forest of magnolias and ferns and tall conifers. Around you, the world hums with quiet life. A small mammal, perhaps a Rapenomamus, no larger than a domestic cat, watches you from the shelter of a fallen log. Its eyes are bright. Its body is covered in soft fur. It is alert but not afraid. It has lived all its life in this world of giants, and it has learned to be careful, to be quick, to be small. Rapenomamus is one of the larger Cretaceous mammals, and even it would not impress a modern observer. The truly impressive thing about it is its persistence. Its lineage has survived through more than 150 million years of dinosaur dominance, never growing large, never claiming great territories, but never disappearing either. They have eaten insects in the night. They have raised their young in burrows. They have outlasted countless dinosaur lineages by being patient, by being adaptable, by being too small to matter. Some of these mammals are surprisingly diverse. There are ground-dwelling species that look something like shrews. There are gliding species with skin flaps stretched between their limbs that drift between trees in the night. There are aquatic species that hunt in slow streams. There are even, in the late Cretaceous, the first true marsupials and the first placental mammals, the ancestors of all mammals alive today, including humans. They are tiny. They are nocturnal. They hide from the dinosaurs and from the larger predators that hunt them. But they are here, and their genetic codes carry the patterns that will, one very distant day, shape elephants and whales and dolphins and lions and primates and us. The story of mammals is being written quietly, in burrows and hollow logs, and the deep undergrowth, while above them the dinosaurs continue their long, bright reign. The two stories are intertwined, although the dinosaurs do not know it. They have, in a sense, been the world's gardeners, shaping ecosystems and clearing space and forging the conditions in which mammals will eventually thrive. Drift now to a different scene. You're standing at the edge of a vast inland sea, perhaps the western interior seaway that once cut North America into two halves during the late Cretaceous. The water is warm and clear. Long beaches stretch in both directions, made of fine pale sand. Behind you, low rolling hills covered in coastal forest. Before you, the calm sea, with the white shapes of distant mosasaurs sometimes breaking the surface. A small group of hadrosaurs, perhaps Edmontosaurus, has come down to drink at the water's edge. They are large but graceful, walking on all fours and then rising onto their hind legs to look around. Their eyes are gentle. Their voices are soft, low calls that they make to each other as they move. Babies cluster near the legs of the adults, smaller versions of their parents, learning the rhythms of the herd. A young one steps too close to the water, and an older animal nudges it back gently, a parent's quiet correction. The herd does not stay long. They drink, they rest briefly, and they move on, disappearing back into the forest with slow, deliberate steps. Above the herd, in the high air, you might see pterosaurs gliding. Not the giant Quetzalcoatlus, but smaller species, perhaps pteranodon, with their long-crested heads and graceful wings. They patrol the coast, looking for fish in the shallows, occasionally diving with a sudden flash of motion. Their wings are made of skin stretched between elongated fingers, and the wind whistles softly as they bank and turn. They cry to each other in voices you cannot quite identify, somewhere between a bird's call and the bark of a small mammal. Their nests are far inland, on cliff faces and high trees, where their young grow up watching the world from above. The Cretaceous continues. Tens of millions of years pass. Continents drift. Climates shift. The Atlantic Ocean widens. The Tethys Sea, which once separated Laurasia and Gondwana, narrows as Africa drifts northward. New mountain ranges begin to rise. The Sevier and Laramide orogenies are slowly raising what will become the Rocky Mountains in western North America. Volcanoes pulse along various edges. The world is not still. It is never still. But the changes are slow, gradual, on timescales that the dinosaurs themselves do not perceive. From within their lives, the world feels stable, predictable, eternal. The same valleys hold the same forests. The same rivers run to the same seas. The same patterns of seasonal rain and dry come and go. Generation after generation of dinosaurs are born, grow, mate, and die. And the world they inhabit is the same world their ancestors knew, and the same world their descendants will inherit. Let yourself rest in this stability for a while. There is something profoundly peaceful about a world that has been the same for so long. The dinosaurs have known no other reality. They have ruled for, by now, over 150 million years. The forests hum, the seas swell and recede with the slow tides. The skies fill with the cries of pterosaurs and the songs of early birds. Mammals scurry in the undergrowth. Insects pollinate flowers. Fish dart through clear streams. Everything is woven together, balanced, settled. This is not a world straining against catastrophe. This is a world at home in itself. The age of dinosaurs is, in many ways, the longest stable age the Earth has ever known. Civilizations rise and fall in thousands of years. Dynasties last centuries. Empires fade in decades. But the dinosaurs ruled in essentially the same forms and patterns for more than 150 million years. Their reign is so vast it almost defeats imagination. It is more than half the time since complex animals first evolved. It is longer than the gap between us and the dinosaurs themselves, longer than the time that has passed since their disappearance. And yet, all things end. Even the longest reign reaches its horizon. The slow, patient world of the Cretaceous is, even now, beginning to shift. Not dramatically, not all at once, but the signs are there for those who would later read them in the rocks. Volcanism is increasing in certain regions. The Deccan Traps in what is now India have begun their long, slow eruption, releasing carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere across a span of more than 1 million years. Sea levels are slowly falling, exposing parts of the continental shelves and altering coastal ecosystems. The western interior seaway is beginning to drain, slowly closing, slowly disappearing. Some dinosaur populations are stressed, some are declining. Diversity is, ever so slightly, contracting in certain regions. But these are small changes, easy to miss, the kind of slow shifts that are only obvious in the long retrospect of geology. To the dinosaurs themselves, the world feels exactly as it has always felt. Imagine yourself walking once more through a Cretaceous forest, perhaps 67 million years ago, just 1 million years before the end. The forest looks much like it has for millions of years. The same kinds of trees, the same kinds of ferns, the same kinds of flowers. A small herd of Triceratops moves through a clearing. They are magnificent animals, 6 tons each, their 3 horns gleaming in the dappled sunlight, their massive frills shading their shoulders. They move with calm purpose, browsing on low shrubs, occasionally lifting their heads to watch the trees. A young T-Rex, perhaps 3 years old and not yet at full size, is hidden in the undergrowth at the edge of the clearing watching the herd. It is hungry, but it is also cautious. The Triceratops are dangerous. A single horn through the chest could end its life. The young predator waits, its body still, its eyes fixed on the herd, looking for the youngest, the weakest, the one who has wandered slightly too far from the others. But the hunt does not happen today. The herd moves on, alert, uninjured. The young T-Rex slips back into the forest and looks for easier prey. Perhaps it will catch a young hadrosaur. Perhaps it will scavenge a carcass. Perhaps it will simply go hungry tonight and try again tomorrow. This is the rhythm of life, predator and prey, hunger and patience, the slow turning of days. The young T-Rex will grow. It will reach its full size in another decade. It will rule its territory for years. It will mate, perhaps, and produce young of its own. It will live the life of an apex predator in a world that has known apex predators for more than 100 million years. It does not know that its species has only 1 million years left. It does not know that the long age of the dinosaurs is approaching its end. It only knows the forest, the prey, the hunger, the slow, warm afternoons and the cool, damp mornings. Drift away from the young T-Rex now. Let your awareness rise into the air, above the canopy, above the clouds. From this height you can see the Cretaceous world in its full glory. The continents in their shapes, almost recognizable but not quite. North America is split by the slowly draining Western Interior Seaway. South America is separated from Africa. India is sailing northward toward Asia. Antarctica is still ice-free and forested. Australia is just beginning to move away from Antarctica. The world is warm, the seas are wide, the lands are full of life. From this high view you can see the herds moving across the plains. You can see the pterosaurs gliding far below you. You can see the great ocean currents stirring the seas. The world is alive, more alive perhaps than it will ever be again, in such complexity, such variety, such interwoven richness. Hold this view for a moment. Just hold it. Let it settle into your imagination. This is the world the dinosaurs built and inherited and ruled. This is the world they shared with mammals and birds and insects and flowers. This is the world that has existed, in essentially this form, for tens of millions of years. It feels permanent. It feels eternal. It is, of course, neither. But for now, it simply is. And for now, that is enough. The dinosaurs have 1 more million years. 1 more million years of forests and herds and songs. 1 more million years of dawns and sunsets, of wet seasons and dry seasons, of hunts and migrations and matings and births. They will use that time well. They will continue until the very end to be themselves. The greatest land animals the earth has ever known. The longest reigning rulers of any kingdom. The patient, unhurried sovereigns of an age that has lasted longer than any human can truly comprehend. Now let your awareness drift back down, gently, into the forest. Let your feet touch soft ground again. Listen to the sounds of the Cretaceous, the rustle of fern leaves, the distant call of a hadrosaur, the hum of insects, the soft scuttle of a small mammal in the undergrowth, the whisper of wind through the conifer needles. These are the sounds of the dinosaur age. These are the sounds you would have heard for 100 million years if you'd been here. There is nothing rushed in them, nothing alarming, just the slow, layered music of a world at home in itself. Breathe with that music for a moment. Let it fill the spaces inside you. Let it settle the day's last thoughts. Let it carry you, gently, towards sleep. We have so much further to go in this story. We have not yet spoken in detail about the great pack hunters, about the polar dinosaurs of Antarctica, about the strange long-necked giants of South America, who grew even larger than the Jurassic sauropods, about the dinosaurs who learned to swim, and the ones who climbed trees and the ones who burrowed underground. We have not yet visited the deep sea, where strange creatures lived without sunlight, although they were not dinosaurs. We have not yet returned to the small mammals waiting in their burrows, or to the early birds spreading their wings in the canopies, or to the insects pollinating the new flowers. The story is vast. The story is layered. We will continue to drift through it, slowly, gently, taking what comes and letting it pass. There is no hurry, there never has been. The dinosaurs have time, so do you. Let yourself rest. The forest is quiet. The world is calm. The dinosaurs are walking, browsing, calling softly to each other in the warm Cretaceous air. The sun is sinking now, low on the horizon, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds. Shadows are lengthening among the trees. The herd is settling for the night, finding sheltered places to rest. The predators are growing quiet, retreating to their dens, their hunger satisfied or postponed until tomorrow. The pterosaurs are returning to their roosts on cliff faces and tall trees. The mammals are emerging into the cool dusk, ready for their nocturnal lives. The world is winding down for the night, as it has wound down for night every night for tens of millions of years. There is comfort in that rhythm. There is peace in that repetition. Let it carry you, just as it has carried countless creatures before you, into the soft dark of sleep. Drift further now. Let your imagination roam across continents we have not yet visited. Let it carry you to the southern lands, to what is now South America, where some of the strangest and largest dinosaurs of all once walked. The southern continents during the Cretaceous were a separate world in many ways, isolated from the north by widening seas, evolving their own distinct lineages over tens of millions of years. The titanosaurs ruled the southern lands, and they were extraordinary. While the great sauropods of the Jurassic, like Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus, had seemed enormous, the titanosaurs of the late Cretaceous in some cases grew even larger. Argentinosaurus, found in what is now Argentina, may have weighed close to 100 tons and stretched over 100 feet from snout to tail tip. Some scientists estimate that the very largest titanosaurs, like Patagotitan or the recently discovered specimens still being studied, may have approached or even exceeded that scale. They were the largest land animals that have ever lived, before or since. Imagine standing in a wide open valley in late Cretaceous Patagonia. The grass beneath your feet does not exist yet, of course, but the ground is covered in low ferns and creeping plants, a kind of soft green carpet that stretches to the horizon. The sky is wide and pale blue, with a few high white clouds drifting slowly. In the distance, you see them. A herd of titanosaurs. From your vantage point, they look almost like moving hills. Their long necks rise above the surrounding vegetation. Their bodies are massive, grey-brown, slightly lighter underneath. Their tails extend behind them like long counterweights. They move slowly, deliberately, each one taking footsteps that would press deep into the soft soil. The earth itself trembles faintly when they walk, not violently, just enough that you can feel it through your feet, a low subterranean hum, like distant thunder that never quite ends. The herd is small, maybe 8 or 9 adults and several juveniles. The juveniles are still huge by modern standards, the size of elephants, but they look small next to their parents. They walk in the centre of the herd, protected on all sides. The adults are watchful, although there are few predators that would dare attack a healthy adult titanosaur. Even the largest theropods, the great Giganotosaurus and its relatives, would have to hunt very carefully, picking off only the youngest, the sickest, or the dying. A healthy adult titanosaur is essentially invulnerable. Its sheer size protects it. Its tail, though it does not have the spiked club of an ankylosaur, is still a powerful weapon, capable of breaking bones with a single sweep. Its legs, each as thick as a tree trunk, can crush a predator if they step on it. The titanosaurs are not warriors. They are simply too large to be easily preyed upon. They live in a kind of regal indifference, browsing on the high vegetation, drinking from rivers, raising their young, growing slowly and steadily and inexorably toward their immense final sizes. And yet, even titanosaurs began as eggs. This is one of the most remarkable facts about them. From an egg the size of a large grapefruit, a creature that will eventually weigh 100 tons must somehow grow. The hatchling titanosaur emerges weighing perhaps a kilogram, no larger than a small dog. Its early life is dangerous. Predators of every size will hunt the young titanosaurs. Pterosaurs may snatch newly hatched babies from the nests. Small theropods will pick off juveniles. Even larger predators will target young titanosaurs as their primary food source. Most titanosaur babies will not survive their first year. Of the hundreds of eggs a single female may lay over her lifetime, perhaps only a handful will reach adulthood. But that is enough. A few survivors are all that is needed to maintain the population, and the survivors grow with extraordinary speed. They double in size in months. They double again. They grow through their teens and into early adulthood at rates that biologists are still trying to explain. By the time they're 20 or 30 years old, they have reached their adult size, and from that point on, very little can threaten them. They will live for many more decades, perhaps even a century or more. Watching the titanosaur herd move across the valley, you might notice something else. They communicate. Not in words, of course, but in low rumbles, infrasonic vibrations, sounds that travel, through the ground as much as through the air. Modern elephants do this, communicating across miles using rumbles too low for human ears to hear, and the titanosaurs likely did something similar. The herd moves as one, and members can sense each other's positions even through forests and over hills. A young animal that wanders too far will feel the call of its mother through the ground. The herd is a single, slow, vast organism in some sense, individual but connected, scattered but unified. Imagine standing very still and feeling the deep rumble of titanosaur conversation travelling through the soil beneath you. A vibration so low it is more felt than heard. The slow song of the giants, sung in a language no human will ever fully understand. Now drift northward, across the warming Cretaceous oceans, across the seas that no longer separate Pangaea, but still cut between continents in places they no longer cut. Drift to the polar regions, to what is now Australia and Antarctica, places that during the late Cretaceous were quite different from today. Antarctica was not yet ice-covered. It sat at high southern latitude, but the world was warm enough that even at the poles there were no permanent ice sheets. Forests grew there, different forests than at lower latitudes, adapted to the long polar nights of winter and the long polar days of summer, but forests nonetheless. And in those forests there were dinosaurs. Polar dinosaurs. The polar dinosaurs are some of the most fascinating creatures of the dinosaur age, in part because for a long time scientists were not sure they could exist. How could cold-blooded reptiles survive the long dark winters at high latitudes? But the dinosaurs were not exactly cold-blooded, at least not in the way modern reptiles are. Many dinosaurs had elevated metabolisms, some essentially warm-blooded, others somewhere in between. They could maintain activity in cold conditions in ways that modern lizards cannot, and they did. Fossils from southern Australia, from what was then the South Polar region, reveal a thriving community of dinosaurs that lived through long winter darkness each year. Small ornithopods, mid-sized theropods, perhaps even some sauropods, although these are debated. They did not migrate away during winter, at least not most of them. They stayed. They lived through months of darkness, surviving on whatever vegetation and prey they could find, perhaps slowing their metabolisms during the deepest cold, perhaps relying on stored fat reserves built up during the abundant summer months. Imagine yourself in such a place. A polar forest in winter, perhaps 75 million years ago, in what is now southeastern Australia. The sun does not rise. For weeks at a time the world is dark, lit only by the soft silver of the moon and the faint shimmer of starlight through the trees. The temperature is cold but not freezing, perhaps a few degrees above zero on most nights. Snow falls occasionally, but it does not stay long. The ground is frozen in places, but in others it remains wet and muddy. The trees are different here. Many are deciduous, having shed their leaves to survive the dark months. Their bare branches reach up against the dim sky. Beneath them, ferns wilt and brown, waiting for the return of the sun. In this twilight world you see them, small dinosaurs moving slowly through the underbrush. Dinosaur, an ornithopod about the size of a wallaby, with a long tail that may have been used for warmth, perhaps wrapping around the body during sleep. Its eyes are unusually large, an adaptation for life in low light. It moves cautiously, browsing on the few green plants that have survived the winter. Other small dinosaurs share the forest with it, theropods that hunt small prey, mammal-like creatures even smaller than the dinosaurs. The community is sparse compared to the lush tropical lowlands, but it is alive. It has survived, year after year, through the long polar darkness. When summer returns, the forest will explode with life. The deciduous trees will leaf out, insects will hatch in vast numbers. Migrant pterosaurs and birds may visit from lower latitudes. The polar dinosaurs will feast and mate and grow strong, building reserves for the next long winter, and the cycle will continue as it has continued for tens of millions of years. Drift to another part of the world now, to the shores of an inland sea, perhaps in what is now Central Asia, where dinosaurs come down to drink in the soft light of dawn. The sea is calm, its surface mirror still. Mist rises from the water in slow curls. The first rays of sunlight are touching the tops of distant hills, painting them gold. Along the shoreline, a group of medium-sized theropods has gathered. They are velociraptors, or rather, the larger Asian relatives of the velociraptor, perhaps a species like Velociraptor mongoliensis itself, though these animals are smaller than they appear in films. A real velociraptor was about the size of a turkey, although turkey-shaped only in dimensions. In other ways, it was lean, fierce, and fully feathered. Its body was covered in soft, downy feathers for insulation, and its arms bore long, stiff feathers that resembled wings, although it could not fly. It was a sleek, intelligent predator with a sickle-shaped claw on each second toe. The pack of velociraptors is small, perhaps 4 or 5 animals. They move with quick, careful steps along the muddy shore, their feathers ruffling slightly in the morning breeze. They are looking for prey, but also for water. They drink quickly, watchfully, eyes constantly scanning. Velociraptors live in a world full of predators larger than themselves, and they cannot afford to be careless. A larger theropod could ambush them if they let their guard down. Even some of the herbivores, the larger hadrosaurs or the rare ankylosaurs, would defend themselves fiercely if attacked, and velociraptors would not engage them lightly. The velociraptors prefer smaller prey: lizards, small mammals, the eggs of other dinosaurs, sometimes a wounded juvenile of a larger species. They are opportunists, they hunt cooperatively when needed, but they are also willing to scavenge or scrounge when easy meat is available. Watching the pack drink, you would notice their feathers. They're colourful, perhaps, although exact colours are difficult to determine from fossils. We know they had feathers because some specimens preserve quill knobs on their arm bones, attachment points where flight-style feathers grew. Their bodies were probably covered in some combination of downy feathers and longer pennaceous feathers, similar to a modern bird of prey but adapted for a different lifestyle. They may have used their wing-like feathered arms for display, for shading their nests, for stability when leaping onto prey. They may have had crests of bright feathers on their heads. They may have had patterns on their bodies for camouflage or communication. We cannot say with certainty what they looked like, but we know they were not the scaly green creatures of older illustrations. They were something more like a cross between a hawk and a small dragon, fully feathered, intelligent and beautiful in their own fierce way. The pack finishes drinking and moves on, melting back into the underbrush. The shore is quiet again. A small group of hadrosaurs who have been waiting at a respectful distance comes down to drink. The mist continues to rise from the sea. The sun is fully up now, warming the air, beginning the day. Pterosaurs begin to take flight from their roosts on the high cliffs. Insects start their morning chorus. The Cretaceous day is beginning, as it has begun every day for millions of years. The dinosaurs are awake. The dinosaurs are walking. The dinosaurs are living their long, varied, beautiful lives in a world that has belonged to them for so long it is impossible to imagine another way. Now let your mind wander to even stranger creatures. The dinosaur age was not just about the famous animals, the T-Rex and the Triceratops and the sauropods. It was full of strange experiments, peculiar lineages, animals with body plans that have no modern equivalent. There were spinosaurs, fish-eating theropods with long, crocodile-like jaws and tall sails on their backs. The largest of them, Spinosaurus itself, may have been semi-aquatic, spending much of its time in rivers and shallow seas, hunting fish much like a giant heron. It had short legs and a powerful tail that may have been used for swimming. It was different from anything else in the dinosaur world, an experiment in an aquatic lifestyle that the great theropods rarely attempted. There were therizinosaurs, strange long-necked herbivorous theropods with enormous claws that could grow to a foot or more in length, perhaps used for pulling down branches or for defense. They looked like nothing else, with potbellies and downy feathers and absurd claws and small heads, and long necks. They looked, in short, like an artist's strange dream. There were oviraptors, small theropods with toothless beaks and elaborate head crests, who tended their nests with great care and may have been among the most attentive parents of the dinosaur world. Fossils show oviraptors curled around their eggs, brooding them like modern birds, sometimes preserved in death by sudden sandstorms that buried them along with their unborn young. There were ornithomimids, ostrich-like dinosaurs with long legs built for speed, perhaps capable of running at 60 miles per hour, hunting insects and small animals or grazing on plants. There were ankylosaurs of all sizes, some no larger than a sheep, some massive enough to rival a small truck. There were ceratopsians of bewildering variety, with frills and horns in every imaginable arrangement. There were small feathered theropods that might have been better described as dinosaur birds, creatures that lived in trees and glided between branches, blurring the line between dinosaur and bird so completely that scientists still argue about how to classify them. Each of these lineages had its own story. Each had its successes and failures, its great moments and quiet declines. Each contributed something to the rich tapestry of dinosaur life. To list them all would take far longer than this story can hold. But know that they were there. Know that the dinosaur world was not a simple place with a few famous species. It was a vast, complex, varied ecosystem, full of niches and specialists and oddities, full of life in all its experimental beauty. For 200 million years, evolution played with the basic dinosaur body plan, twisting it into countless forms, testing every possibility, creating creatures both magnificent and absurd, both beautiful and strange, and every one of them was real. Every one of them lived and breathed and moved through the world, leaving their bones in the rocks for us to find, leaving their stories for us to slowly piece together. Let your awareness rest now, gently. Let the long parade of dinosaur diversity drift past you in your imagination. The titanosaurs of the south, vast as mountains, the polar dinosaurs of the cold high latitudes, the fish-eating spinosaurs of the rivers, the strange clawed therizinosaurs of the dry plains, the tiny gliding feathered dinosaurs of the forests, the mighty T-Rex of the late Cretaceous north, the peaceful ankylosaurs in their living tanks, the herd-living hadrosaurs with their resonant calls, the horned ceratopsians with their elaborate frills, the pack-hunting raptors with their feathered arms, all of them at once, the full bloom of 200 million years of dinosaur life. Hold them gently in your mind. Let them walk through the soft landscape of your dream. Let the ground tremble faintly with their footsteps as you drift towards sleep. There is something deeply restful, I think, in contemplating this scale of life. We live in such short measures, our days, our years, our brief decades. We rush, we worry, we strive. And yet beneath us, in the deep rocks, there is a record of beings who lived and ruled and prospered for spans of time we can barely conceive. The dinosaurs were not anxious. They did not hurry. They did not measure their existence in minutes or weeks or even centuries. They simply lived, generation by generation, for 200 million years. The forests grew around them, the seas rose and fell, the continents drifted in their slow patient dance, and the dinosaurs continued, walking, browsing, hunting, calling to each other in the soft, warm air. Their world was not perfect. It was not paradise. There was struggle. There was pain. There was death. But it was a world that worked, a world in balance, a world that hummed with the long, slow music of life finding its way. You're part of that long story too, in a way. The mammals that survived the end of the dinosaur age went on to become every mammal alive today, including you. Your own ancestors, in some distant Cretaceous burrow, watched the dinosaurs walk past and waited for their own moment. You carry in your body the patient genetic memory of those small mammals. You are connected, through an unbroken chain of life, to the world we are walking through tonight. The dinosaurs are not separate from you. They are part of your inheritance. Their world made yours possible. Their absence created the space in which you came to exist. And, now in this quiet moment as you drift towards sleep, you are returning the favour in some small way. You're remembering them. You're walking their forests in your imagination. You're honouring their long, gentle reign. And they, in some quiet sense, are walking with you. Let yourself sink deeper now. The story continues. We have not yet reached the end. The dinosaurs are still here. The Cretaceous is still in its long, full afternoon. There is no urgency. There is no fear. Just the slow turning of pages in the great book of the world. and we will turn them together one at a time gently until the story is told, until you are sleeping, until the dawn comes, in your time and place, and you wake into your own quiet world having spent the night in the company of giants. The Cretaceous moved into its last great chapter slowly. The world remained warm, the forests continued to grow, the dinosaur lineages continued to refine themselves, but the patterns underneath the surface were beginning to shift. If you could measure carefully across thousands of years, you would find that average global temperatures were inching downward. The last few million years of the Cretaceous saw a slight cooling trend, modest by modern standards but significant over geological time. Some of this was due to the breakup of Pangaea, which was changing ocean circulation patterns in ways that altered heat distribution. Some was due to slowly varying carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. Some had causes we still do not fully understand. The point is that the world was no longer in perfect equilibrium, the way it had been for tens of millions of years. The world was shifting slowly towards something new. Sea levels were also slowly falling. The great inland seas that had covered so much of the continents during the mid-Cretaceous were beginning to drain. The western interior seaway, which had cut North America in half, was slowly retreating, leaving behind vast new lowlands of exposed sediment that would eventually become some of the richest fossil-bearing rocks in the world. The Tethys Sea between Africa and Eurasia was narrowing. The seas that had separated India from Asia were shrinking as India continued its long northward drift. The world was, in some sense, becoming less marine and more continental, more dry land and less shallow ocean. This had consequences for ecosystems on land and at sea. Coastal habitats changed. Rivers changed their courses. Some climates became more seasonal. Some species adapted, some did not. And then there were the volcanoes. In what is now Western India, an enormous volcanic event was beginning. The Deccan Traps, one of the largest volcanic provinces in Earth's history, was erupting. Not all at once, but in slow, vast pulses spread over more than 1 million years. Lava poured across hundreds of thousands of square miles. Ash filled the air. Carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide were released in massive quantities. The Deccan eruptions were nothing like the gentle volcanic activity of the Jurassic or the early Cretaceous. They were cataclysmic, even by geological standards. They affected global climate, contributed to acid rain, altered ocean chemistry. By themselves, they would have caused significant ecological stress. They were not by themselves enough to end the dinosaur age. But they were a warning, a slow, low note of trouble, building beneath the surface of an otherwise stable world. Imagine standing on a hillside in late Cretaceous India, perhaps 66 million years ago, watching the Deccan eruptions in the distance. The horizon glows red at night. Plumes of ash rise into the upper atmosphere, forming clouds that drift across the sky. The air carries a faint sulphurous smell, even hundreds of miles from the eruption site. Rain, when it falls, sometimes feels slightly acidic, etching small pits into leaves and stone. Animals nearby are restless. Plants near the eruption zones are dying. But further away, in the great forests of the rest of the world, life goes on much as before. The Cretaceous communities are not yet collapsing. They are stressed in places, but they are still vibrant, still complex, still rich. The dinosaurs are still here. The pterosaurs are still flying. The mosasaurs are still hunting in the seas. The world is still the world. Now drift to a different scene, to a landscape of forests and rivers in what is now Montana, perhaps 66.5 million years ago. A large herd of Triceratops moves through a fern-covered valley. There are dozens of them, the largest herd of horned dinosaurs you have seen in our journey. They are heading toward a river, where they will drink and rest. A pair of T-Rex watches from the edge of the forest, but they do not attack. The herd is too large, too well defended. The T-Rex will look for stragglers, for lone individuals separated from the herd. They are patient. They have plenty of time. The world feels stable. The world feels eternal, and in some sense it is. The dinosaurs do not know that this world has only a few 100,000 years left. They do not know that something is approaching from the far reaches of space, a small dark traveller that has been wandering through the solar system for billions of years and is about to find its destination. They do not know any of this. They simply drink at the river, doze in the afternoon sun, raise their young, hunt their prey, sing their songs, walk their long, slow walks. They are doing what they have always done. They have no reason to think the world will be different tomorrow. Let yourself rest in this moment. The herd at the river, the patient predators at the forest's edge, the mist rising from the water, the pterosaurs gliding overhead, the small mammals waiting in their burrows, the insects pollinating the late Cretaceous flowers, the full late afternoon glow of the dinosaur age with its long shadows and its golden light. This is a world that has existed in essentially this form for tens of millions of years. This is a world that the dinosaurs have made their own. And for now, in this quiet moment, it still belongs entirely to them. Time passes, seasons turn, years stack into decades, into centuries, into millennia. The herd at the river is replaced by another herd, then another. The T-Rex pair grows old and dies. Their offspring grow up and have offspring of their own. The forests cycle through their slow rhythms. New flowers bloom, old trees fall, new trees rise. The world is always changing, but always in the same patterns. The dinosaurs continue. Their reign continues. Their long, patient, immense reign. And then, one day, in a moment that takes only a few seconds in the great span of geological time, everything ends. A 6-mile-wide asteroid, travelling at 20 kilometers per second, strikes the Earth in what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The impact is so violent it is almost impossible to describe in human terms. The asteroid pierces the atmosphere in less than a second, hits the shallow sea covering the Yucatan and slams into the bedrock beneath. It releases the energy of billions of nuclear bombs. It vaporizes itself and a vast quantity of the Earth's crust. It throws molten rock and debris into the upper atmosphere, sending some of it into space. It generates earthquakes that shake the entire planet. It produces tsunamis taller than mountains, sweeping outward across the oceans. It creates a fireball that incinerates everything within hundreds of miles of the impact site. And it lifts a vast cloud of dust and ash and vaporized rock into the upper atmosphere, where it will spread around the globe in the coming weeks. This is not a story I want to dwell on because it is sad, and because it does not need to be told dramatically to be felt. The dinosaurs that were near the impact died instantly, in the fireball. They did not suffer. They did not even know what was happening. The dinosaurs further away saw the strange light in the sky perhaps, or felt the ground shake. Some may have been killed by the tsunamis or the heat pulse, but the real ending, for most of the dinosaurs and for most of the life on Earth, came afterward. The dust and ash that was thrown into the atmosphere blocked out much of the sunlight for months, perhaps years. Photosynthesis crashed. Plants began to die. The herbivores that ate plants began to starve. The carnivores that ate herbivores soon followed. The food web collapsed in pulses, slowly at first, then more rapidly as the cascading effects spread. Most dinosaurs did not survive this collapse. Within perhaps thousands of years, perhaps tens of thousands, the great lineages that had ruled the Earth for 200 million years went extinct. Triceratops disappeared. Tyrannosaurus rex disappeared. The hadrosaurs, the ankylosaurs, the ceratopsians, the sauropods, the spinosaurs, the therizinosaurs, all of them gone. The pterosaurs, who had ruled the skies, also disappeared. The mosasaurs and plesiosaurs of the seas gone. Many fish, many marine invertebrates, many mammals, many plants gone. It was the end of the Cretaceous and the end of the long age of dinosaur dominance. The world's longest reign was over. Let yourself feel this loss gently. It is part of the story. It would not be honest to skip past it. But also, please, let yourself remember that this was not the end of life. Life continued, even in the darkest moments, even as the food web crashed and the great lineages fell, life found refuges. In burrows beneath the ground, small mammals waited out the worst of the dust winter. In the deep oceans, far from the surface chaos, organisms continued to live in their slow, dim worlds. In freshwater rivers and lakes where ecosystems depended less on direct sunlight and more on detritus, many species survived, and in the trees and the underbrush, a few small dinosaurs, the ones we now call birds, also survived. Yes, the dinosaurs did not entirely disappear. Their direct descendants, the birds, were already a successful lineage by the end of the Cretaceous. They were small, feathered, often warm-blooded in the truest sense, capable of flight, often nesting in places that survived the catastrophe. Some birds died, many birds died, but some lived, and in the millions of years after the asteroid impact, those surviving birds would diversify into the more than 10,000 species of birds alive today. Every bird you see, every sparrow at your feeder, every hawk circling above a meadow, every duck on a pond, every chicken, every pigeon, every owl, every parrot, every hummingbird, every penguin, every albatross, every eagle, every robin, every ostrich, every flamingo is a living dinosaur. They carry the genetic legacy of the great age forward into the present. They walk among us. They sing in our forests. They watch us from the branches. So in truth, the dinosaur age never really ended. It changed form. The great giants are gone. Yes. The titanosaurs, the T-Rex, the great sauropods and theropods, all of them are gone. But the lineage continues. The dinosaurs adapted as they always had, becoming smaller, becoming feathered, becoming the birds that would continue to thrive in the world that emerged after the asteroid. They have been here all along. They are still here. When you hear birdsong in the morning, you are hearing the descendants of dinosaurs who survived the worst day in Earth's history and went on to inhabit every continent, every ecosystem, every corner of the modern world. The dinosaurs ruled for 200 million years as the great land animals, and then they ruled as the great flying animals. Their reign, in some sense, has never ended. After the asteroid, the world entered a new age, the Cenozoic, the age of mammals, as it is sometimes called, although that name is incomplete. Mammals did diversify spectacularly in the millions of years after the dinosaur age ended. Released from the pressure of dinosaur predation and competition, they grew larger, more varied, more adventurous. Within a few million years, mammals had filled most of the ecological niches left empty by the great extinct dinosaurs. Some grew enormous, some took to the seas, becoming whales and dolphins, some took to the trees, becoming primates, eventually leading to humans. Some became hunters, some grazers, some specialists, some generalists. The age of mammals was vast and varied and is still going on, although in geological terms our age is still very young. We have not yet ruled for 10 million years, let alone 200 million. Let yourself drift back through time once more gently. Let yourself walk one last time through a Cretaceous forest before the asteroid came. The trees are tall, the light is warm, a herd of hadrosaurs is moving through the underbrush in the distance. Their soft calls drift on the breeze. A pterosaur glides overhead, its wings catching the late afternoon sun. A small mammal watches from a fallen log, its eyes bright, its tail twitching. A young triceratops grazes in a clearing, its frill still soft and growing, its 3 horns just beginning to take their final shape. A T-Rex, somewhere in the distance, lets out a low, resonant call that travels through the forest. The world is alive. The world is full. The world is, in this moment, exactly as it has been for tens of millions of years. Hold this moment. Let it settle into your imagination. This is what it looked like. This is what it sounded like. This is what it smelled like, the resin and the ferns and the warm earth. This is what it felt like. The soft trembling of the ground when the great herds moved. The quiet humming of insects, the long, slow breath of an entire world at peace with itself. The dinosaurs do not know what is coming, but they have lived well. They have ruled well. They have, for 200 million years, been the most successful land animals the Earth has ever produced. They have shaped ecosystems. They have driven evolution. They have left their mark on every continent, in every kind of habitat, in countless variations of form and behavior. And in the rocks, in the bones, in the genes of their bird descendants, they have left a legacy that will outlast their absence by far more than 200 million years. Drift gently away from the forest now. Let your awareness rise once more, above the canopy, above the clouds. Look down at the late Cretaceous world one final time. The continents in their almost familiar shapes, the warm shallow seas, the forests covering most of the land, the polar regions ice-free and forested, the herds moving across the plains, the pterosaurs gliding in the high air, the mosasaurs cruising in the seas, all of it, all of this complex and beautiful world still alive, still working, still humming with the long, slow music of life. The dinosaurs are still here. They will be here for a little while longer, and then, one day soon in their time, but very long ago in ours, the sky will fall, and a new chapter will begin. But this is not where we end tonight. Because the story is not really about ending. The story is about the immense long span of dinosaur rule, about the world they made and shared and shaped, about the long patient rhythm of an age that lasted longer than any other in the history of complex life on Earth. The story is about wonder, about scale, about the deep time perspective that gently reminds us how vast the world is, how patient evolution can be, how much beauty and complexity can unfold over millions and millions of years, the stories about the long song the Earth has been singing for billions of years, and how the dinosaurs were, for a remarkable span of that song, the loudest and richest melody. Let yourself rest in this perspective for a moment. 200 million years of dinosaurs. From the small Eoraptor in the late Triassic forests to the great Tyrannosaurus rex of the late Cretaceous plains. From the tiny feathered flyers of the Jurassic to the massive titanosaurs of southern Patagonia. From the polar dinosaurs of Antarctica to the desert dinosaurs of Central Asia. From the swimmers and the climbers and the burrowers to the high-soaring pterosaurs and the deep-diving plesiosaurs. All of them, woven together, sharing one long, slow age. An age that is more than 3 times longer than the entire span of mammals as a dominant group. An age longer than any kingdom or empire or civilization could ever dream of being. An age so vast it dissolves the moment you try to grasp it whole. So do not try to grasp it. Just let it drift through your mind in pieces. A herd here, a predator there, a forest, a sea, a small mammal in its burrow, a pterosaur in the sky, pieces of an immense puzzle that fits together in your dreams. Listen now. Listen to the soft sounds of the dinosaur age. They are not loud. They are not dramatic. They are the gentle hum of insects in the warm air, the slow rumble of titanosaur conversation travelling through the ground, the distant call of a hadrosaur in the dawn mist, the whisper of pterosaur wings against the wind, the rustle of ferns as a small mammal scurries through them, the soft splash of water as a sauropod drinks at a riverbank, the low, resonant breathing of a sleeping T-Rex in its forest den, the long, slow song of an age that lasted 200 million years. Let those sounds fill your mind. Let them settle the day's last thoughts. Let them carry you gently into the soft dark of sleep. You have walked tonight through more time than your imagination can really hold. You have visited forests that vanished 66 million years ago. You have stood in the shadow of giants who walked the earth before any human ancestor existed. You have watched the slow turning of an age that opened before us and closed before us, leaving only its bones and its songs and its bird descendants behind. You have, in some small way, honoured that age by remembering it. You have, in some quiet way, walked alongside the dinosaurs as they lived their long, patient lives. They are gone in their original forms, but they were here. They were really here. They walked, they ate, they slept, they raised their young, they sang their soft songs in the warm Cretaceous air. They were as real as you are. They were for 200 million years the rulers of the world, and now, as your breathing slows and your body softens into rest, let them go. Let the forests fade, let the herds disperse into the soft fog of sleep. Let the pterosaurs glide off into the high distance. Let the great T-Rex turn back into the trees and disappear. Let the world return to itself, to its present, to your quiet room, to your warm bed, to your peaceful breathing. The dinosaurs are sleeping. The Cretaceous forest is quiet. The long age has ended, and a new age, your age, is gently holding you. The story is done for tonight. Rest now. Rest in the knowledge that life continues, that the world is older and stranger and more wonderful than we can usually remember, and that you are part of a long, long story that began before the first dinosaur and will continue long after our own brief moment is gone. Drift now. Drift into sleep. The dinosaurs are still walking through the soft places of your dreams. They are gentle there. They are calm. They are not in any hurry. They have time. So do you. Let yourself sink, slowly, slowly, into the deep quiet of rest. The forest is dim. The herd is settling for the night. The pterosaurs are roosting in their cliffs. The small mammals are going about their nocturnal business. The world is winding down, as it has wound down every night for millions of years. There is comfort in that rhythm. There is peace in that repetition. Let it carry you, just as it has carried countless creatures before you, into the soft dark of sleep. But the story we have been telling tonight, the long, gentle story of dinosaur rule, contains within it a quiet secret. A twist that scientists have only fully begun to understand in recent decades. It changes everything we thought we knew about the rise of the dinosaurs, about how they came to rule, about why they lasted so long. and it is a twist that begins not with the dinosaurs themselves but with their absence, with the strange, slow truth that for the first part of their existence, the dinosaurs should not have ruled at all. They were never supposed to be the kings of the world. By every reasonable measure of their early history, they were destined to remain forever in the margins, and yet here we are, telling their story across 200 million years. So what happened? What changed? What was the secret that turned the dawn thieves into the rulers of an age? Let yourself settle deeper into the warm hush of this story. There is no urgency in this twist. It is a quiet revelation, the kind that unfolds slowly, the way the dinosaurs themselves unfolded across their long, slow age. To understand it, we must first revisit something we touched on briefly earlier. We must return to a world before the dinosaurs ruled, to that long, strange period when they were small and unremarkable, when other creatures held the throne, when the dinosaurs were merely watching from the underbrush. Because the truth is this: for the first 30 million years of their existence, the dinosaurs were not winners. They were not even contenders. They were a quiet experiment, a minor lineage, a small group of bipedal reptiles in a world that belonged to others. Picture again the late Triassic, around 230 million years ago. The first dinosaurs have appeared in what is now Argentina. Smalliraptor and Herrerasaurus and their cousins. They are bipedal. They are quick. They are intelligent for reptiles of their time. They have the upright posture, the efficient locomotion, the basic body plan that will eventually carry their descendants to global dominance. By every appearance, they should have been spreading rapidly, taking over ecosystems, displacing the older creatures, but they did not. For tens of millions of years after their first appearance, they remained small and rare. The fossil record is clear about this. In rock layers from the early late Triassic, dinosaur fossils make up a tiny fraction of the animal remains, in some places less than 5%, in other places even less. They were present, but they were not important. They were footnotes in their own world. Who, then, were the rulers? This is where the twist begins to take shape. The world that the early dinosaurs lived in was dominated by other archosaurs, the same broader group of reptiles that the dinosaurs belonged to, but different lineages within that group. The Cretaceans, sometimes called pseudosuchians, were the kings of the late Triassic. They were the cousins of dinosaurs, sharing a common ancestor far back in the early Triassic, but they had taken a different evolutionary path, and by the time the first dinosaurs appeared, the Cretaceans were everywhere. They were the largest predators. They were the dominant herbivores. They were the masters of nearly every ecological niche that large land animals could occupy. There were Rauisuchians, the great predators we mentioned briefly before. Some of them were enormous, with skulls more than 3 feet long, equipped with serrated teeth and powerful jaws. They walked on 4 legs, but their legs were positioned beneath their bodies in an upright posture similar to the dinosaurs. They were fast. They were intelligent. They were efficient hunters. Imagine a creature like Prehistoric, a top predator of the late Triassic in what is now North America. It was 20 feet long, weighed perhaps 1,000 pounds, and was the apex predator of its environment. A young dinosaur passing through Prehistoric's territory would have been nothing more than a quick snack. The dinosaurs of that age lived in the shadow of these creatures. They survived by being small, by being quick, by staying out of the way. Then there were the etosaurs, heavily armoured herbivores covered in bony plates and spikes. They came in many forms, some no larger than a pig, others reaching 15 feet in length. They occupied the herbivore niches that, in later ages, would be filled by the great horned dinosaurs and the armoured ankylosaurs. Etosaurs grazed in herds across the late Triassic landscapes, dug for roots with their shovel-like snouts, and defended themselves with their armour when predators attacked. They were successful. They were diverse. They had been around for tens of millions of years before the first dinosaurs appeared, and they showed no signs of going anywhere. There were phytosaurs, long-snouted, semi-aquatic predators that looked remarkably like modern crocodiles, although they were not closely related to true crocodiles. They lived in rivers and lakes, ambushing prey at the water's edge, hunting fish and amphibians and unwary land animals. They occupied the niche that crocodiles would later fill, and they did it perfectly. There were also less famous lineages, smaller Cretaceans of various kinds, generalist predators and specialized hunters in strange experimental forms. The Cretaceans, taken together, were one of the most successful and diverse groups of land animals the world had yet seen, and alongside them, Persisting from earlier ages were the dicynodonts. These were synapsids, members of the lineage that would eventually produce mammals, but at this point still mostly large herbivorous creatures with strange beaked faces and sometimes tusk-like teeth. The dicynodonts had survived the Great Dying of the Permian and had recovered in the Triassic, becoming common medium-sized to large herbivores in many ecosystems. Some of them grew quite large. Lysoisia, recently discovered in Poland, was a dicynodont that reached the size of an elephant, weighing 9 tons or more. Imagine that. A mammal relative the size of an elephant, walking the late Triassic landscapes, browsing on tough vegetation, completely indifferent to the small bipedal dinosaurs that occasionally darted past its feet. The dicynodonts were not threatened by dinosaurs. The dinosaurs were not even on their radar, so this was the world of the early dinosaurs. A world dominated by cruritarsins and dicynodonts. A world in which the dinosaurs were minor characters, scurrying around the edges, occupying small niches that the larger creatures had not bothered to claim. For 30 million years, this was how it was. The dinosaurs evolved. They diversified slowly. They tried different body plans, different sizes, different strategies, but they could not break through. They could not displace the dominant lineages. The cruritarsins were too established, too well adapted, too successful. The dicynodonts held the large herbivore niches firmly. The dinosaurs were stuck in the margins. Now here is where the twist begins to deepen. For decades, scientists had assumed that the dinosaurs eventually rose to dominance because they were simply better. The standard story went something like this. Dinosaurs had superior body plans, superior metabolisms, superior locomotion. Over time, they outcompeted the older lineages. They were faster, smarter, more efficient. The cruritarsins and dicynodonts were no match for them. The dinosaurs gradually pushed them out of their niches and took over the world. It was a tidy narrative, the kind of evolutionary success story that makes intuitive sense. The better adapted creatures win. The dinosaurs were better adapted. The dinosaurs won. But the fossil record, when examined closely, did not support this story. When paleontologists looked carefully at the late Triassic rocks, they found something unexpected. They found that cruritarsins and dinosaurs lived alongside each other for tens of millions of years without the cruritarsins declining. The cruritarsins were not slowly losing ground to the dinosaurs. They were not gradually being outcompeted. They were thriving. They were, in fact, more diverse than the dinosaurs were during this period. They occupied more niches. They had more species. They had more variety in body sizes and ecological strategies. If you had been a paleontologist studying the late Triassic without knowing what came after, you would have predicted that the cruritarsins were going to dominate the future, not the dinosaurs. The cruritarsins were the obvious winners, so if the dinosaurs were not slowly outcompeting the cruritarsins, what changed? What was the twist that suddenly elevated the dinosaurs from marginal players to rulers of the world? The answer, when scientists finally pieced it together, was both simpler and stranger than the old narrative had suggested. The dinosaurs did not win because they were better. The dinosaurs won because the cruritarsins died. Let that settle for a moment. Let the gentle weight of that revelation rest on you. The dinosaurs did not climb to dominance through long generations of evolutionary triumph. They did not earn their throne by gradually proving themselves superior. They inherited an empty throne. They walked into a kingdom whose previous rulers had simply, suddenly, vanished. And the event that cleared the way for them was not a triumph. It was a catastrophe. A second great extinction, far less famous than the asteroid that ended the dinosaur age, but nearly as transformative, the Triassic extinction. This is the twist that changes the story. Let me tell it gently, because it is a sad part of the long history, but it is essential to understand if we want to truly understand the dinosaurs. About 201 million years ago, give or take a few 100,000 years, the world experienced one of the 5 great mass extinctions of geological history. It was not as severe as the Great Dying that had ended the Permian. It was not as iconic as the asteroid that would end the Cretaceous, but it was profound, and its causes were similar to those of the Carnian pluvial episode and the Great Dying. Massive volcanism, carbon dioxide injection, climate change, ecosystem collapse. The trigger this time was the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, an enormous volcanic event tied to the ongoing breakup of Pangaea. As the supercontinent continued to pull apart, vast rifts opened in what would eventually become the Atlantic Ocean. Along these rifts, magma poured out across hundreds of thousands of square miles, in eruptions that lasted hundreds of thousands of years. The volume of lava produced was staggering, millions of cubic kilometers, comparable to the great volcanic events that had triggered earlier extinctions, and along with the lava came the gases, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, methane. The atmosphere transformed, temperatures spiked, ocean chemistry shifted, acid rain fell across the world. Plant communities collapsed in many regions, marine ecosystems were devastated, and the Cretaceans, those magnificent rulers of the late Triassic, were hit harder than almost anyone else. We are not entirely sure why. Perhaps their large bodies made them vulnerable to the rapid climate shifts. Perhaps their reproductive strategies were too slow to recover from population crashes. Perhaps their specialized niches collapsed when the ecosystems around them collapsed. Whatever the reason, the fossil record shows it clearly. Within a relatively short period, in geological terms, perhaps a few 100,000 years, the great Rauisuchians vanished. The Etosaurs disappeared. Many of the Phytosaurs died out. The Dicynodonts, which had survived so many earlier crises, went extinct as a group. Lysowicia, the elephant-sized mammal relative, was gone. The world that had existed for tens of millions of years, that had seemed so stable, that had been ruled so confidently by the Cretaceans and the Dicynodonts, was suddenly empty. But the dinosaurs survived. This is the heart of the twist. The dinosaurs, who had been marginal players for 30 million years, who had been small and unimportant and easily overlooked, made it through the end-Triassic extinction. Not all of them, of course. Many dinosaur lineages also died. But the dinosaurs as a group survived in numbers, while the Cretaceans and Dicynodonts did not. Why? This is one of the great mysteries of evolution. There are several theories. Some scientists think it was simply a matter of luck. The dinosaurs happened to have body plans or behaviors that, by chance, allowed them to weather the catastrophe better than the dominant lineages. Others suggest that the dinosaurs' upright posture and efficient breathing systems gave them a slight edge during periods of environmental stress. Still, others propose that the dinosaurs' generally smaller body sizes during this period helped them survive when food chains collapsed. Smaller animals need less food. Smaller animals reproduce more quickly. Smaller animals can recover from population crashes more easily. But whatever the precise reason, the result was clear. When the dust settled and the volcanic eruptions finally quieted, the world looked dramatically different. The great Cretacean dynasties were gone. The Dicynodont herbivores were gone. The ecological niches they had occupied for tens of millions of years stood empty. And there, in the silent forests and on the empty plains, were the dinosaurs. Still small, still unremarkable by the standards of their late Triassic predecessors, but suddenly without competitors, suddenly without the enormous predators and herbivores that had kept them confined to the margins. The dinosaurs woke up one geological morning and found that the world belonged to them. Imagine, if you will, a small early dinosaur, perhaps a Plateosaurus, walking through a forest in the early Jurassic just after the extinction had ended. The forest is quieter than it used to be. There are no Rauisuchians lurking at the edges, no Etosaurs grazing in the open spaces, no great Dicynodonts moving in slow herds across the meadows, just the dinosaur and a few of its kin, and the empty echo of a world that had recently been so full. The Plateosaurus does not understand what has happened. It cannot perceive the change. To it, the forest is simply the forest, but its descendants will spread into every corner of the empty world. They will grow larger, because there is no longer anything to compete with them for the giant herbivore niche. They will diversify into countless forms, because there are countless empty niches waiting to be filled. They will, within a few million years, become the dominant land animals of the planet, and they will hold that position for the next 150 million years. Now let this revelation settle into your mind. The dinosaurs did not rule because they were the best. The dinosaurs ruled because they were lucky. They survived a catastrophe that killed almost everyone else, and they inherited a world that had been emptied of competitors. Their success was not earned through long generations of evolutionary triumph. It was handed to them by chance. They were the right creatures in the right place at the right time, when the dice of geological history rolled in their favour. Had the end-Triassic extinction played out slightly differently, had the Cretaceans been the survivors instead, the dinosaurs might have remained marginal forever. Or they might have gone extinct entirely. The world might have been ruled for the next 150 million years by the descendants of Rauisuchians and Etosaurs, while the dinosaur lineage faded into obscurity. We would never have heard of T-Rex. We would never have known Triceratops. The whole great age we have been walking through tonight would never have existed. This is the twist that changes everything. The dinosaurs were not the inevitable rulers of the Mesozoic. They were the lucky survivors of a near miss. They were the lottery winners of a geological lottery whose stakes were the future of life on Earth. And yet, even knowing this, even understanding that their reign was the product of chance rather than merit, we cannot help but marvel at what they did with their inheritance. Because once the dinosaurs had the world, they made the most of it. They evolved into forms that pushed the limits of what is biologically possible. The largest land animals ever, the longest-necked, the most heavily armoured, the most spectacularly horned, the fastest, the most intelligent, the most beautifully feathered. They explored every possible body plan, every conceivable ecological strategy. They turned their lucky inheritance into one of the greatest success stories in the history of life on Earth. But the twist deepens further, because the dinosaurs were not the only ones who got lucky in the end Triassic extinction. And here is where the story turns into something almost philosophical, something that invites us to reflect on the strange contingency of all life. Among the survivors of the end Triassic extinction were a few small mammal relatives, descendants of the Dicynodont lineage and other synapsid groups. They were tiny, they were nocturnal, they were utterly insignificant in the new world that the dinosaurs were beginning to dominate, but they survived, and for the next 150 million years they would continue to survive, in burrows and hollow logs, in the deep undergrowth, in the spaces the dinosaurs did not bother to occupy. They would wait. They would evolve quietly, refining their warm-blooded metabolism, their fur, their nursing behaviour, their parental care. They would develop over those long patient ages all the features that would eventually define mammals. And when the second great catastrophe came, when the asteroid struck the Yucatan Peninsula 66 million years ago, those tiny mammals would survive again. They would emerge from the ashes of the dinosaur age into a world that, once again, had been emptied of its rulers. And they would inherit in turn an empty throne. They would diversify into elephants and whales and primates and humans. They would in their turn become the dominant land animals of a new age. And one of their descendants, a clever bipedal primate, would eventually develop the capacity to look back across deep time, to read the rocks, to piece together the long story of life, to wonder, to imagine, to tell, on a quiet evening many millions of years later, the story of the dinosaurs, not as a tale of inevitable triumph, but as the gentle and surprising story it really is. Let your awareness rest in this pattern for a moment. There is something deeply restful about it, the pattern of mass extinction and inheritance, the way each great age ends with a catastrophe that clears the way for the next, the way the new rulers always come from the margins, from the small and unremarkable creatures that no one would have predicted. The dinosaurs were the lucky margin dwellers of the late Triassic. The mammals were the lucky margin dwellers of the late Cretaceous. We ourselves are descendants of margin dwellers, of small creatures who survived because they were small, who waited because they had nothing else to do, who inherited the world because they were the ones who happened to be left when the great rulers fell. There is humility in this pattern. There is also perhaps a quiet kind of hope, that the long story of life is not about the strongest or the most magnificent. It is about the patient, the adaptable, the ones who wait through the dark. But there is one more layer to this twist, one more revelation that has emerged from recent decades of paleontological research, and it is perhaps the most beautiful of all. For a long time, scientists believed that the rise of the dinosaurs after the end Triassic extinction was relatively quick. The Cretaceans died, the dinosaurs filled the empty niches, and within a few million years the world was theirs. But more careful study of the fossil record has shown that the takeover was actually slower and more complicated than anyone had realized. The dinosaurs did not immediately fill all the empty niches. In some regions, particularly in low-latitude tropical zones, other reptile groups lingered for millions of years after the extinction. The dinosaurs did not become truly dominant in those regions until even later. There were strange transitional periods, ecological gaps, slow shuffles of which lineages would inherit which roles. The world did not snap immediately into the age of dinosaurs. It drifted slowly, generation by generation, into that age, with many small twists and reversals along the way. And in some of those transitional periods, surprising things happened. There were brief moments when other lineages seemed poised to challenge the dinosaurs again. Crocodile relatives, the descendants of the Cretaceous lineage, did not entirely die out. They had been reduced, but a few survivors persisted, and in the early Jurassic they began to evolve into new forms. Some of them became aquatic, the ancestors of modern crocodiles, but others tried different paths. There were terrestrial crocodile relatives that walked on long, upright legs, almost like dinosaurs themselves. There were small, fast-running crocodile relatives that occupied niches similar to small theropods. For a brief time, in some ecosystems, it looked as if the Cretaceous lineage might mount a comeback, but it never quite happened. The dinosaurs were already too established. The crocodile relatives that persisted eventually settled into the semi-aquatic niche they hold today, becoming the alligators and crocodiles and gharials of the modern world. They are, in a sense, the last whisper of the great late Triassic dynasty, the final survivors of a lineage that once ruled the world before the dinosaurs took over. When you see a crocodile lazing in a river, or an alligator sunning itself on a riverbank, you're seeing something profound. You're seeing a creature whose ancestors, 200 million years ago, were the rulers of the world, whose ancestors had every reason to believe they would continue to rule forever, whose ancestors were knocked off the throne by a catastrophe they could not foresee, and replaced by creatures that, at the time, no one would have considered serious contenders. The crocodile is not just a fascinating reptile. It is a living reminder of the contingency of evolutionary history, a monument to a different timeline that almost was, a quiet survivor from an age that ended before the dinosaurs even truly began. And there is yet another twist hidden within this revelation, because the relationship between the early dinosaurs and the Cretaceans was not one of simple competition. Recent research has shown that the two groups often coexisted in surprisingly stable ways. They occupied different niches, different microhabitats, different ecological roles. They shared landscapes for tens of millions of years without one driving the other to extinction. The end Triassic extinction was not a slow defeat of the Cretaceans by the dinosaurs. It was a sudden catastrophe that affected one group much more severely than the other, and the reason it affected the Cretaceans more severely may have had nothing to do with the dinosaurs at all. It may have had to do with body size, with metabolism, with reproductive strategy, with happenstance. Some scientists now propose that the key difference was something almost invisible. The dinosaurs may have had hollow bones and air sacs as part of their respiratory systems, features they would later refine into the highly efficient breathing apparatus of birds. These features may have allowed the dinosaurs to extract oxygen more efficiently from atmospheres that had been altered by volcanic gases. The Cretaceans, with their more conventional reptile lungs, may have struggled in the low oxygen, high carbon dioxide world of the post-volcanic Triassic. If this theory is correct, then the dinosaurs survived not because they were faster or stronger or smarter, but because they breathed slightly better. A small physiological difference, almost invisible from the outside, made all the difference in the world. The future of life on Earth, the entire age of dinosaurs, the long evolutionary path that led to birds and to us, may have hinged on the structure of a few key bones and the way a few crucial breaths were taken. It is a humbling thought. And a strangely peaceful one, too. The vast, magnificent age we have been walking through tonight. The herds of titanosaurs and the great T-Rex and the soaring pterosaurs and the polar dinosaurs and the swimming spinosaurs, all of it traces back to a small physiological advantage in a few small reptiles at the end of the Triassic. The whole spectacular cathedral of the Mesozoic was built on a quiet, almost accidental foundation. The dinosaurs did not climb to dominance through grand evolutionary battles. They drifted into it gently, on the wings of luck and a few small advantages that no one at the time would have noticed. Drift now with this thought. Let it settle into your imagination. The dinosaurs that we have been remembering tonight, all those magnificent creatures that walked the earth for 200 million years, were not destined to rule. They were not predetermined victors. They were one possibility among many, a thread that became a tapestry, only because a few earlier threads happened to break in just the right ways. The world we have been walking through was real, but it was not inevitable. It was a gift of chance, a long, beautiful, accidental gift, and the dinosaurs themselves in their slow, patient lives never knew. They simply lived. They simply walk through their warm forests and their sunlit valleys, raising their young, calling to each other in the dawn, going about their long, quiet days, never knowing that they were the lucky inheritors of a world that had almost belonged to someone else. This is the gentlest part of the twist. The dinosaurs never knew. The Cretaceans, in their final days, did not know they were the last of their kind. The Decinodonts did not know that their long lineage was ending. The early dinosaurs did not know that the world was about to be handed to them. None of them knew. They all simply lived day by day, season by season, doing what their bodies and instincts told them to do. The story we tell now, looking back across 230 million years, is a story none of them could have imagined. They were inside their own moments, just as we are inside ours. They walk through their forests just as we walk through ours, with no clear sense of where the long story was going. And yet, looking back, we can see how the pieces fit together. We can see how each chance event led to the next. We can see how the long, slow current of life carried them, and us, to where we are now. There is something deeply restful in this perspective. It suggests that we too are part of a story we cannot fully see. Our own moment, our own age, is being written by chances and accidents we cannot perceive. The future will look back on us and see patterns we are blind to. They will see, perhaps, that we were the lucky margin dwellers of some greater story, or that we made some quiet small choice that mattered more than we realized. We cannot know. We can only live as the dinosaurs lived, doing our best to walk gently through our world, raising what we love, calling softly to each other in the dawn, going about our long quiet days. The story is not finished. The dice are still being rolled. The next great age is being written even now, in the small choices and small chances of creatures who do not yet know they are inheritors. Let yourself rest in this. Let the gentle weight of the twist settle into your dreams. The dinosaurs ruled for 200 million years not because they earned it, but because they were given it. They held that gift well. They built something beautiful on its foundation. They lived their long, quiet lives in the warm forests of an age that was always more fragile than it seemed. And then, when their own catastrophe came, when the asteroid fell from the sky, they passed the gift on to others, to the small mammals waiting in their burrows, to the feathered descendants who would become the birds, to the long line of creatures who would inherit the empty throne and walk, in their turn, through the long, quiet ages of life on Earth. You are part of that long inheritance. The dinosaurs walked the world so that, eventually, you could walk it too. They made the world possible, even as they themselves were made possible by creatures who came before them. The chain of inheritance stretches back through the deep dark of time, and it stretches forward into the deep bright of the future. We are all margin dwellers, in some sense. We are all the lucky ones who happen to be here, in this moment, watching the long story unfold. The dinosaurs did not know they were lucky. We do, and in knowing, we can perhaps appreciate more fully the strange, gentle, accidental beauty of being alive at all. Drift now. Let the twist fade into the soft fabric of the rest of the story. The dinosaurs are still walking through your imagination. The Cretaceous. Forest is still warm. The herd of titanosaurs is still moving slowly across the southern plains. The young T-Rex is still hidden at the edge of the clearing, watching the Triceratops herd, patient and unhurried. The world is still alive, still humming with the long, slow music of 200 million years. The twist does not change any of this. It only deepens it. It only makes the music more precious, more delicate, more wondrous. The dinosaurs ruled because they were lucky. And in their luck, they made something that has echoed across the deep time of Earth, all the way to this quiet moment, where you lie in the warm dark listening to a story about creatures who walked the world before any of your ancestors had even taken their first true steps. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, as it really helps us continue making more content. Anyways, see you in the next one. If you could spend one day in any part of the dinosaur age, where would you go and what would you most want to see? Let me know in the comments. Sleep well and dream of giants.